Benji, Bruce here, and let's get going. Today we are going to be talking about controlling your story. What do you do if people are talking bad about you? I mean, we're going to talk about the whole thing, right? I got several stories to share, but ultimately we're going to talk about what do you do if people are talking bad about you? How do you control your story, the brand story, in order to generate more sales, obviously? So that's what I want to talk about today. Let's see who's hopping on real quick. And we're going to get going. If you have any questions, make sure you ask some questions as well. But I've got a lot, I've got a lot of people I want to talk about. So we're going to go over that. But once again, today is all about controlling your story, your brand story in order to generate more sales. And what do you do if people are talking bad about you? I mean, obviously, if you're online, if you're doing anything anywhere, eventually people are going to talk bad about you. That's just inevitable. No matter what, people are going to hate you. They're going to hate the way you talk. They're going to hate your attitude. They're going to hate your face. People are just going to hate you for whatever that reason is. And maybe some of them are cray-cray and they're going to post about you online. So what do you do with that, right? So that's what I want to talk about in terms of the whole brand story today. A while ago, I made a video about a guru who appeared out of nowhere. And this guru right now, he's a big time guru, but at the time he just appeared out of nowhere. So he had this YouTube ad and he's filming the ad with his phone. He's in his garage and he's filming on his phone and he's saying whatever he needs to say in the ad, right? And if you look at the Google trend on his name, it goes like this, and then boom, it just skyrockets, right? All because he spent money. He simply took his phone, he recorded an ad, sold a program, and that was that. Literally from one ad, it just made this dude famous instantly, right? But what happened was, if you searched his name, it was so-and-so scam artist. Is so-and-so a scam? And that's what happened when you search for this guy online. And I thought to myself, like, why is that? Why does everyone think this guy's a scam? They literally know nothing about him. I mean, he came up out of nowhere with this famous YouTube ad out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden people are thinking this guy's a scam. And so I'm thinking, why do they think he's a scam? So I'm like looking at his videos. I'm like, this guy, like, you can tell he's really smart and everything. I'm like, why do people think he's a scam? And so I started looking up his story, and I couldn't really find much about him in terms of his backstory. Like, what did this guy do before he just became the top guru, right? And I couldn't really find anything about him, and that's when it hit me. I was like, well, the reason why people think he's a scam is because you can't find his backstory. You don't know anything about him. When you do a search for him, like so-and-so, what did he do before? You can't find anything about him. And that's why people thought he was a scam. He allowed everyone else to control his backstory. Instead of him telling people, here's how I made my money, he just allowed everybody to control his backstory. What you need to do is the exact opposite. You need to control your own story instead of allowing other people to control it like what that guru did. Right now, he's big time, but he could have been bigger if he just would have allowed people to understand what his backstory was. And I'm sure some of you guys know who I'm talking about, but if you allow other people to control your backstory, then you won't be able to control the sales in your business. And so you have to like really, really understand what your backstory is and what it is you're trying to do with the thing. Because remember, people are skeptical. They're skeptical as all hell. People come online. They're like, does this dude really make that much money? Can he really get me the results that he's talking about? Can he really do this? People are skeptical as hell. And so if you don't control that backstory, if you don't control your brand story, people simply won't buy from you. They won't be interested in you. They're going to be like, this dude's ugly. And they're just going to listen to whatever story somebody else is talking about you, whether they posted a story about you online or whatever. They're going to listen to that story instead of your no story that you don't control. So if you control your story, you'll simply just generate more sales. I mean, you'll be more known, you'll build a bigger audience and all that. If you don't control the story, you risk getting branded as a scam artist, as a whatever it is. People are talking about you in terms of whatever they want to say about you, right? So let's see. You said, I think some people thought that about you originally. Yeah. Everyone, like I said, whenever you're growing anything, people always think scam. That's what people always think whenever you're building, right? Naturally, that's just what people think. That's why you control the story. If you don't control it, that's what people will think in the long term, right? And so that's why you have to understand people are naturally skeptical. And then we're going to talk about how do you control that story, really. So there's a few people I want to talk about that I listed in terms of people who controlled their story. If you know who Stephen Hawking is, like maybe you heard the name Stephen Hawking. He was the physicist who was in the wheelchair and he couldn't really move. He had the computer voice, probably like the most famous physicist ever other than Einstein, like literally the most famous. And so, if you look up Stephen Hawking or you hear about this guy, you think to yourself, wow, I mean, this guy must be like on par with Einstein. Like he must have changed the game in science. Like he must be like one of the top guys inside of science, right? That's what you naturally think when you hear the word Stephen Hawking, this physicist. But I looked it up and nobody considers him to be even the top. It was like 100. Like top 150. He wasn't even close. Like they didn't even consider him to be one of the top physicists ever, like at all. But Stephen Hawking, he understood how to control his story. And so he wasn't saying like, hey, I'm one of the top guys like Einstein in terms of changing the game. He didn't do that. What he did is he literally, this is actually from his book. This is one of the descriptions from his book. It says Stephen Hawking was the most renowned scientist since Einstein, known for both his groundbreaking work in physics and cosmology and for his mischievous sense of humor. So in the beginning, it says Stephen Hawking was the most renowned scientist since Einstein. Basically saying I'm the most known scientist since Einstein. He's not saying I changed the game like Einstein, but I'm the most known since Einstein, which he was. And so he didn't win a Nobel Prize, nothing. He simply talked about how he's the most renowned scientist since Einstein. And so he was controlling his story about that, which naturally makes people believe that, hey, if you're that well known, you must be on par with Einstein. But in reality, everyone in science knows that Stephen Hawking isn't even close to being the top 100, right? So he simply controlled his story. Same with Ray Kroc. If you guys saw the movie The Founder, which talks about McDonald's, right? This dude, he was ruthless, like hands down ruthless. But in the movie, what happened was there's the McDonald brothers. They started the McDonald's chain. Then Ray Kroc came in and said, hey, I can build this thing a lot bigger than what you guys are doing. Let's go. Let's get it. Let's build this thing. Let's make it national, worldwide, right? And they didn't really have that ambition as Ray Kroc. And so they kind of just let him do what he did, eventually stole the business from him. And when he stole the business from him, what he did is he put on his business card, founder of McDonald's. He wasn't the founder. He was simply a sales guy who came in, just built the business huge and kicked the founders out. And then he claimed to be the founder. And for the longest time, I thought he was the founder until I read the book, The Founder, and I really heard about the story. But for the longest time, I thought he was the founder. And it's because he controlled the story. He said, you know what? To be honest, I basically did build McDonald's. So I'm just going to say I'm the founder anyways. And that's what he did. And also he did little things like McDonald's #1. That's in the movie. You just go watch the movie, right? But basically, Ray Kroc, he controlled his story. Stephen Hawking controlled his story. Michael Jackson controlled his story. So Michael Jackson, in case you don't know what he did, is as he's building his career, eventually he said, you know what? I want to be like Elvis. Elvis was like the king of rock and roll, and who else? Who else at the time? Like he looked at a few people in terms of their nicknames, and he said, you know what? I want to be the king of pop. And he decided that in order for you to allow him to, well, before he stepped out on stage or in an interview or anything like that, you had to say Michael Jackson, the king of pop. If you did not say king of pop, he would not walk out on the stage. He simply would not. If you said, we got the greatest entertainer in the world, you're going to love him, all that, Michael Jackson. Michael, what? That's literally what would happen. You had to say king of pop. Even the talk show hosts, all of them had to say king of pop. They even made a couple talk show hosts actually go back to their previous archives, and they had to like re-record the introduction and say king of pop when Michael came out. They even did things like that because Michael wanted to control his story. He wanted to be known as the king of pop. He wanted to be known as one of the greatest entertainers that ever lived. And so he told people, hey, here's what you're going to call me by. And so it really was. He literally controlled his story. Same with like 50 Cent. Some of you guys know who 50 Cent, you heard about 50 Cent. He's the rapper, the gangster rapper, right? 50 Cent, he's known for getting shot 9 times and then doing his thing. In reality, 50 Cent got shot 5 times. But Tupac, another rapper, very well-known rapper, also got shot 5 times. And 50 Cent didn't want to be compared to Tupac because it's like being compared to the best, right? It's like being compared to Michael Jordan. Like, you don't want to be compared to one of the top guys, right? So he was like, you know what? I'm going to say I was shot 9 times. I was shot even more than Tupac. And so that's what he did. He controlled his story, and that's how he got big time. He controlled the story of this gangster. We don't actually know how gangster 50 Cent really was. I mean, of course he was, but we don't know, like, was he Scarface status or was he just street level status, right? So we don't really know that, but he controlled the story to make it look like and sound like he was damn near Scarface. And so they're controlling their story with purpose. So it's not just for no reason whatsoever. And when you control the story with purpose, then it accomplishes the thing that you want it to accomplish. And so that's what, like, someone like 50 Cent, that's what he wanted it to accomplish in terms of getting shot 9 times. He understood, like, hey, if I say this, I know people are going to compare me to Tupac. If I say I got shot 5 times, so let me say I'm going to get shot 9 times, which is better than Tupac. I mean, getting shot that many times and still surviving. Like, hey, I'm better than Tupac, right? So he was controlling his story. P.T. Barnum, if you guys know P.T. Barnum, the Barnum and Bailey circus stuff, P.T. Barnum is considered the greatest showman of all time. Hands down, they made the movie on him. It's titled The Greatest Showman, right? He is hands down considered the greatest showman of all time. Why? Why is P.T. Barnum considered the greatest showman of all time? Because he said so. He was the guy who said, the greatest showman. I am the greatest showman of all time. He controlled his story, and eventually that's what happened. People said, P.T. Barnum's the greatest showman of all time. Everybody believed it because he controlled it. Muhammad Ali, same thing. What did Muhammad Ali say? I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. And if you ask people who's the greatest boxer of all time, people tend to say Muhammad Ali. If you ask, like, real boxers, though, they'll say things like Roy Jones Jr. They'll say, like, nah, Ali was great, but someone like Roy, he was better, right? So real boxers will say things like that. But Muhammad Ali controlled the story. He constantly kept saying, I'm the greatest of all time, right? And so he controlled his story. You don't know what happened in the past of someone's story. You don't know the details. What a person's doing with their stories, they're taking years, decades of everything that happened and summing it down into a sentence, into a couple of words, right? Like Dwayne Johnson, his thing is the $7. He's like, yes, all this stuff happened, and then I just realized that, I was in football, and I was doing that, but then it didn't work out, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm broke, I'm homeless, and I only have $7 in my pocket, right? You don't know the reality of the story, and the way it sounds like is, wow, this guy's homeless. He's got nowhere to go. He's only got $7 in his pocket. And poof, now he's The Rock. Now he's Dwayne Johnson, biggest movie star nowadays, right? And so you don't really see what the whole story is. You don't know that, sure, he has $7 in his pocket, but maybe he could have went to his parents' house, right? So you don't really know the entire story. But he's controlling the story to motivate people. He's controlling the story to add to his presence, right? And so you just got to understand, in terms of controlling the story, if you control your story, you control their actions. You control people's actions. That's why you have to control your story. And if people are talking really bad about you online, we'll talk about that in a second, but if people are talking bad about you online, they're the ones controlling your story. And you have to take over that. You have to control your own story, right? So once again, controlling the story, control their actions. Basically, the way you want to think about this is you want to think, what's the specific result that you're getting for people, and you just blow that up, right? So if you're building an online brand, you're thinking, all right, what's the problem I saw? What's the end result that I'm getting for people? And you just blow it up. You're like, here's the story that I'm all about. You blow that thing up. Your story should show the results that you've gotten. Like you're not talking about where you're gonna go. You're not like, all right, I mean, we're gonna be this and we're gonna do all that, because that's where people can actually they can basically say, no, that's not true. This guy's talking about 10 years in the future, going to be a billionaire. What? And so that's things that people can dispute. But if you're talking about your past and you're talking about the results that you've gotten up until now, people can't refute that. People can't say, oh no, he didn't actually help this dude make $1 gazillion. And you can say, look at this. Here's the proof, right? And so you have to think more along the lines of, your story is essentially the results you've gotten. If you can't prove it, you don't want to say it, even if it's true, because eventually someone's going to come along. Let's say it was true that I made $1 billion yesterday, right? And I come online and I say, hey, everybody, I'm celebrating today. I made $1 billion yesterday, right? Everyone was like, oh, okay, cool. Bullshit. That's literally what people are thinking. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, right. Just because I wouldn't be able to prove it. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. If you can't prove it, it didn't happen. So you got to ask yourself in terms of the results that you're getting. You got to control that story. All right. And once again, you got to think in terms of, what do I want my story to do? Because perception is everything. Whenever you think about controlling your story, you think about, here's my story. What's the consequence of that story, whether it's an unintended consequence? What happens when I tell this story? What does this thing do to somebody? How does it influence people? That's how you want to think about your story, because perception, it really, really does influence people. A perfect example, Jamie Foxx. I wrote down Jamie Foxx. So Jamie Foxx's real name is Eric Bishop. And Jamie Foxx, like before he was Jamie Foxx, he was Eric Bishop, and he's trying to get on stages at these open mics and these like comedy mic nights and stuff. The problem is that the guy in charge, the guys in charge of the comedy open mic nights, they always wanted to put the women up, because they're like, hey man, I mean, if I let women get on stage and do their thing, then maybe they'll like me and then they'll give me their number and all that. So the guys were putting women up more than men on these open mics. And so Jamie Foxx, like, he knew this, and his name was Eric at the time. So you had to fill out on the form, you had to write down your name that you wanted to be up next or whatever. And so the bouncer guy would look, and he would look at all these names, and he would pick a name. Like, all right, Jane, you're next. Sarah, you're next. All right, Eric, you're last, right? And so the bouncer guy would pick it, or the host guy, he would pick the names. And Jamie Foxx realized that these hosts were picking female names more than male names. So what he did is he changed his name to where it was gender neutral. So Jamie, it can either be a girl's name or a guy's name. And so when the host looks at it on the piece of paper and he sees Jamie Foxx, he doesn't know, is that a female or is it a guy? So he doesn't know that. And so Jamie Foxx started getting picked more often in terms of actually going and actually doing his thing with comedy, right? Just because he changed his name from Eric Bishop to Jamie Foxx. And so if you control your story, you naturally influence people. And this is something that I did a lot when I was building up my entertainment business. What I did, I would do little things like I knew. All right, so here's where I got the idea. I went to this one guy's website. He was like one of the top corporate entertainers in the U.S. I went to his website and I saw a huge list of previous clients that he was hired by. I mean, I felt like I was scrolling for hours. I'm like scrolling and stuff. I'm like, God damn, this dude, what? Like, I didn't even know that there were this many companies in the world, right? And so I'm scrolling. I'm like, dang, no wonder he's like one of the top guys. What the heck? And so that impression on me, I was like, how do I create this impression on other people? Because when I felt that, I was like, man, if this guy says I charge 50 grand, I'll believe him. Like, I was like, I'd believe him. If he said, pay me 50 grand because that's what I charge, I would believe him, just because of that reaction that I had with the huge list of clients. So I thought to myself, I want to create that reaction inside of people when they go to my website, when they look at my stuff, right? So I started doing little things like, had a list of previous events that I did, like last year or the year before, whatever. I created this list of previous events. So it was like, you see the date. It said January 2nd, I don't know, Washington, D.C., XYZ dinner event. January 4th, Florida, annual gala event, and it just had a list of all these events that I did like the previous year or the year before, and it was this huge list, right? And so what I would do is when I would email people, I would send them that list, and I had this huge list. It was on my website, and I would send them that list, and it would say like, oh, and by the way, if you want to plan your event like around Benji's schedule, here's his schedule from last year, right? And it didn't really make sense in terms of what I was saying. Like, if you want to plan your event around his schedule, it didn't make sense with that. But the purpose was to get them to click on the link and then have the same impression. Like, damn, this dude's booked up. Like, wow, my goodness, it's his schedule last year. Wow, okay. And so that's what I did. And it worked. It hands down, it worked. All I did was just list my previous events. And it really worked. It created that impression inside of people, and naturally I just start getting more gigs at higher rates. And I had less friction. So whenever I told people, yeah, it's 15,000, 20,000, there was less friction from them to actually pay me. Whereas in the beginning, before I started doing stuff like that, and hey, if I said 5,000, people were like, well, is there any wiggle room in your pricing? Right? And so if you control your story, you control the minds of the people who are buying from you, and you control their actions. You influence people in a certain way. Like a member inside of our program posted a video with Lady Gaga. She was getting interviewed for her new movie, right? And she mentioned briefly about how she acted as her own manager back in the day. So she was like, oh yeah, Lady Gaga is really booked and right. And she acted as her own manager, which influenced people to kind of say like, this person must be in demand, which means they're more likely to actually bring her at an event, right? So little things like that, you really do want to control your story. Oh, I got here Apple, right? So here's a perfect example of how your story can naturally influence people. You guys know Apple, the company, iPhones, right? Think about what they did with the iPhone in the beginning. In the beginning, they created the iPhone. They're like, oh, this new thing, cool, iPhone, right? Everyone is standing in line for the iPhones. And then poof, sold out. Like, all right, we're going to release iPhone November 1st. Poof, sold out in a couple of hours, if that, right? People are in the huge line. And I was like, dang, all right, cool. A new iPhone comes out, iPhone 2, right? Now the same thing happens. They're like, all right, it's going to come out November 1st. Huge line. People are waiting in the line. Bam, stores open, sold out instantly. Like, wow, this iPhone must be pretty good. I mean, why is it just getting sold out? iPhone 3 comes out, iPhone 4, iPhone 5. All these same things happening over and over and over again. They announce the iPhone, people are standing in a huge ass line, and then within a couple of hours, the thing is sold out. And if you want an iPhone, you got to wait a month or 2 months for the new orders to come in. What I started to do, I started thinking like, why doesn't Apple, I mean, they have all this money in the bank, like over $100 billion in the bank. Why don't they just make more iPhones so that way they don't just sell out and people don't have to wait for a month or however long to actually get the new iPhone if they didn't like wait in a line for a couple of hours. And I was thinking like, why don't they do that? And then I thought about it from a marketing perspective. It is hands down brilliant, because think about what happens to you as a buyer. You're thinking to yourself, okay, yeah, I want to get a new phone. I want to get this new iPhone. And you remember previously with all the other iPhones, they get sold out instantly, like instantly. It's not a question. It's just instant, right? You think, all right, damn, all these iPhones are getting sold out. I got to pre-order my iPhone, or I got to stand in line in order to get one. I can't even wait until noon that day because they're going to be sold out. And so Apple influenced people by controlling the story of how their iPhones were being sold. They simply said, hey, when we come out with this, it's going to sell out within a couple of hours. So if you don't get it instantly, you won't have one for a month or two, right? And so they controlled the story, which controlled people's actions. It controlled how people responded. And so that's how you really want to think when it comes to story. Your story is created over time. So you want to think in terms of reputation. That's basically what your story is going to be about. It's reputation and repetition. And repetition. That's your story. And that's why all you think about is, what do I want to be known for? What's the problem that I saw? What do I want to be known for? And then you just build that reputation over time. And you're sitting there, let's say you want to be known for being the best cold calling guru ever, right? You're like, I'm going to be the best cold calling guru ever, the best sales trainer ever. Well, what do? Over time, you simply build it up. You show that here's all the results we've gotten for all these other people. Here's the content we're producing. You build it up over time. And then it's one of those things that people can't refute. Like, people can't say, oh, he's not one of the greatest cold callers in the world, because you say, look at all this proof from 10 years worth of stuff. Look at all this stuff. And so you just show the proof, right? If you don't control the story, what happens is what Donald Trump did to every politician that he was running against. Look at what Trump did. He absolutely destroyed everybody. And he did that by controlling their story. What did he do? He said, Crooked Hillary, Lying Ted, Crazy Bernie, right? He branded these guys with names, and he controlled their story. So Hillary's doing her thing. Next thing Trump does, he says, Crooked Hillary. What's her story? Her story is now everything she says. She's a crooked person, right? Whether she's legit or not doesn't matter. Trump branded her as Crooked Hillary. He kept saying it over and over and over again. Crooked Hillary, Crooked Hillary, Crooked Hillary, until a point where people believed him. And everyone was like, oh, man, I don't really know if you can trust Hillary. And bam, he just branded her. Same with Lying Ted. Lying Ted, he kept saying that over and over. He wasn't really a competitor. Everyone knew it was going to be Hillary and Trump pretty much, but he was branding all of them. Crazy Bernie. So he took Bernie Sanders, and he was like, this dude's crazy. So he called him Crazy Bernie. What he did was hands down brilliant. There's no doubt about it. If you look at all politicians, what they do is they look at their competitors, and they try to create a false story. So like I just saw on all these commercials with the election that came up, what they did is they were like, so-and-so is running for office, and he's not helping workers get jobs or whatever. And they're trying to do that with this person, right? They didn't do it the way Trump did. Trump, hands down, did a brilliant job by literally branding them. He took one small truth about the person, one thing that people are thinking about when they look at this person, when they look at Hillary, when they look at Bernie. He took like a small, it doesn't even have to be true, but it's one thing that people thought. People like, oh, is Hillary, like, she seems kind of shady, right? He took one little aspect and he said, all right, let me emphasize that thing about her. Let me emphasize Crazy Bernie, right? And so that's what he did, and that's why he hands down, he controlled their story. And so you don't want other people to control your story. If people are talking bad about you, then what you have to do is, one, you have to understand it's not as bad as you think. So when people talk bad about you, what you think is, you're like, oh my goodness, someone posted about me online. Oh my goodness, they said I'm a scam artist. Oh my goodness, my life is over. So understand it's not that bad. It's hands down, it's not. And if you look at your life compared to someone like, let's say, Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, I guarantee you, no matter what people say about you, they said 10 times more worse things about Jordan Belfort. And hey, a movie came out about this guy, and he is still a multimillionaire, right? Everything, right? Dude went to prison. The dude literally scammed people. What else did he do? Took all the drugs, hookers, everything. I guarantee you that whatever you think is bad, that people are talking about you, it's nothing compared to his stuff. He's had people call him a scam artist, all sorts of stuff, right? And so you got to understand that yours isn't as bad as you think. So that's the first thing you got to get through your head, because if you don't understand that, then you're going to overreact. You're going to sit there and you're going to do basically what Ja Rule did to 50 Cent. So here's what happened with the story if you don't know between these two. So 50 Cent, he's an up-and-coming rapper. Well, he was an up-and-coming rapper. Ja Rule is the known guy. He's the guru that everybody knows of. Nobody knows who the heck 50 Cent is at the time. 50 Cent started talking about Ja Rule. He started talking trash about him. Ja Rule, like a dummy, put attention on 50 Cent. Ja Rule was like, no, this guy, he didn't really get shot 9 times. He started to put attention on 50 Cent. Nobody knew who the guy was. But because Ja Rule put attention on 50 Cent, he just started to rise up. Everyone's like, who's this guy 50 Cent? And they started to Google him, like, who's 50 Cent? And they started listening to his stuff. They're like, oh, wow, that's cool. I like his music. Find me in the club, body full of, and so people start listening. They liked it. And so, basically you got to know like when to ignore it and when to actually talk about it. You see, Ja Rule, he should have ignored 50 Cent. Hands down, should have ignored him. 50 Cent wasn't even close to being on his level at the time. He should have just ignored him, and then nobody would have heard about 50 Cent. But he overreacted. 50 Cent came out with a diss track about Ja Rule and Irv Gotti and all these people. He overreacted, and because of his overreaction, he put attention on the thing that he shouldn't have put attention on. And everyone went to that thing, and poof, 50 Cent blew up. Now he's way more known than Ja Rule, right? And so you can't overreact. When something happens, people post about you online, do not overreact. Understand it's not as bad as you think. I saw this company. I don't want to say the name of the company, but my friend was working for this company, and I Googled them. I Googled the company. Damn near every result on Google said XYZ company scam. Like almost every result. And I'm like, I've never seen anything like it before. I mean, I've seen people get talked bad about, but I've never seen every result on Google as scam. So I sent my friend a message. I was like, dude, do you know when I Googled you guys that everybody's calling you guys a scam? And he was like, yeah, I mean, the boss knows, the CEO knows, but he doesn't care. And these guys were doing 9 figures, right? Now you got to think about that. If a company can do 9 figures and every result on Google said scam, then you got to realize that your situation isn't as bad as you think. It's hands down, it's not as bad as you think. Because what happens when people talk about you, they put attention on you, and then other people see that, they naturally gravitate towards you, and they check you out. So they start to see, oh, is this person really a scam? They look at your material, they look at your videos, they look at your content, they look at that stuff. They're like, oh, I got to see, is this guy a scam artist? I got to see for myself. And then they realize, oh, he's not really a scam artist. Oh, he actually is kind of smart. And then they start to realize that. They start to follow you. They start to buy from you, right? And so that's why you got to understand that it's not as bad as you think. And then what you do is you control it. You take over that story. So if a perfect example of this is there's 2 people. There's the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, and then there's Frank Kern. So obviously, I don't know if you guys seen the Wolf of Wall Street. Great movie. Really cool. But the book is even better if you want to read the book. But basically, Jordan Belfort, in case you don't know who he is, basically he started out as a stock guy and eventually just scammed a ton of people, right? Scammed a ton of people, did a ton of drugs, got a ton of hookers. I mean, the dude's life was freaking crazy, right? Now, if he didn't control his story, and let's say he came out with programs on how to sell, the guy's a master at selling, really, really good at selling. Let's say he didn't talk about his story. What would have happened is people would have Googled him. They would have figured that out. Like, oh, damn, this dude, like hookers galore, freaking, oh my goodness, dude taking drugs, a scam artist, dude was in prison. What? And they would have done that. They would have posted about him and he would have been screwed. What he did is he controlled his story. He simply said, oh yeah. I took drugs. Yeah, I had a ton of hookers back in the day. Yeah, I scammed people. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to do it. That was just the drugs and all that. My bad. So he controlled his story. He admitted to it. He wasn't ashamed of it. He was like, yeah, that's my story. Now let's move on. And by doing that, it's almost like you relieve the pressure because people are looking for the thing. They're like, gotcha in a lie. I gotcha. Whereas if you say, it's like if someone says, did you take that, Johnny? Did you take that water bottle? No. And versus if they say, did you take that water bottle? You're like, yeah. And you're like, okay. Versus if you lie about it, people are going to be like, I don't believe you, man. I mean, it was here in the beginning. You're the only person in the house. It was right here, and all of a sudden it's gone. You're telling me that you didn't take the water bottle? And so you just blow it up out of proportion. Whereas if you control the story and you admit to it, you're like, yeah, I did it. And if it's something bad, like you stole money from people like Jordan, then you just say, yeah, I did it. My bad. And then that's it. And then you just move on. You control the rest of the story. Frank Kern, same thing. The dude, I mean, hands down, one of the most brilliant internet marketers nowadays. And what he did a while ago, he got sued by the FTC. And the FTC, they sued him over, I don't really know the details of it. Basically, his affiliates were scamming people. They were saying things they shouldn't have been saying, but because they were representing Frank Kern, he got in trouble. And so Frank Kern, he could have easily have ignored all that. He could have easily have not said anything about getting sued by the FTC, right? But instead, what he did is he controlled the story. He was like, oh yeah, guys, by the way, I got sued by the FTC. Here's what happened. And he controlled the story. And he makes fun of it as well. He would make fun of it. He's like, all right, guys, so I got to give you a disclaimer nowadays, because I don't want to get sued by the FTC again. And so he controlled the whole story. Whereas he didn't allow other people to kind of look it up and say, damn, dude got sued. Oh my goodness, must be a scam artist. So you got to control the story. If people are talking bad about you, first, you don't overreact. You don't do what Ja Rule did and just blow it up. You don't overreact. Second, you got to ask yourself, like, is it something that I need to put attention on? Like, how big is this thing? Because if you put attention on the thing that people are talking bad about, you can blow it up. The same way Ja Rule did when he blew up 50 Cent, you can just blow that out of proportion. And so that's why you don't overreact and you decide, is this something that I really need to address? If it's something big like Jordan Belfort or Frank Kern or whatever that people can easily just see and it's going to ruin everything, then you simply take control over it. You admit to it. It's one of the reasons why if you look at all the people who get in trouble for everything, the people who make it worse are the ones who kind of don't admit to it and things like that. They don't admit to doing it. Whereas the people who admit to doing it and they're not ashamed of it, those are the people who go through who get through everything. They're like, oh yeah, my bad. Didn't mean to do it. Yeah, I did it, but my bad. And so that's how you get through it all, right? So just don't hide your story. Basically, what you're doing when it comes to your story is you essentially take a truth, you exaggerate it, you get attention to it, and then you just back it up with proof. That's all you're doing. You say, all right, here's a truth. The truth is I help people get X, Y, Z. Here's a truth. You exaggerate it if you need to, like you change the story a little bit if you need to, and then you put attention on it, and then you simply you back it up with proof. So a perfect example is Ali, right? So Ali always said, I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest, right? He exaggerated being the greatest. Was Ali the greatest? I mean, now everyone considers him to be the greatest, but he exaggerated the fact that he's the greatest. Same with P.T. Barnum. I'm the greatest showman of all time. Same with damn near everybody. Everybody exaggerates to an extent, right? But what they did is they took a truth. So Ali wouldn't be considered the greatest if it wasn't true, or he wouldn't be considered the greatest if he lost all the time. He could back it up. If you can't back it up, then your story is basically a lie. Or not basically, your story is a lie if you can't back it up. So if Ali said, I'm the greatest of all time, and every single fight he had, he was losing, like he was just getting beat every single time, he never would have been considered the greatest. And so that's essentially, oh yeah, Houdini. I completely forgot about Houdini. Dang, I don't know why I forgot about that dude. Yeah, Houdini, master showman, same thing. It's just a matter of, Houdini was a master at telling his story. So Houdini, I don't want to reveal how he did his stuff, but basically he allowed a story to happen. He allowed people to think he's the greatest escape artist of all time. Like hands down, actually a perfect example of what he would do when he was doing any type of escape, right? So when he's doing an escape, he gets locked up in handcuffs. They would have a curtain go over his head. He'd get out of the handcuffs instantly. Like he'd get out in a few seconds if he wanted to, but it wouldn't really be a show. So what he did is like freaking an hour later, like you hear him, he's like grunting and stuff. You hear all this stuff and he's exaggerating everything. He takes a truth. Hey, I can get out of these handcuffs instantly if I want. He exaggerates the truth. He's like, you know what? Instead of getting out of it in 10 seconds, let me take an hour. Like, let me exaggerate it. And then he put attention on it. Obviously there's an audience there. He had attention on it. And then he backed it up with proof. So, and then an hour later, I'm free, right? And then he's like, I'm the greatest escape artist of all time. No, nothing can hold me. No banks, no nothing, right? And so that's what he did. That's why he became like the greatest entertainer of all time, right? And so you gotta do something like Houdini and all these guys that when you're actually thinking about your whole story. Ultimately, you're just thinking, what do I want to be known for? So you're thinking, what do I want to be known for? And then you have to gather proof of your story. So as you're building your career, think in terms of how do I gather proof of my story? And so the proof can be content, by the way. Like you can create content and you can show like what you did in 10 years ago. You can do that in terms of proof. This is one of the reasons why I take the screenshots inside of our group and our Facebook group, or whether it's emails or whatever, and people say like, hey, you helped me make damn near $250,000. I did $30,000 this month versus last year I only did $30,000 altogether, and now I did $30,000 this month, right? So what I'm doing is I'm taking screenshots of this because over time I'm going to have so much proof it's going to be ridiculous. You will not be able to dispute me. You simply won't. I'll be like, they'll say, oh, no, he can't get results. Poof. How about you go through these thousands of testimonials, go through thousands of people who've gotten results, right? So you're building all that over time, and you're telling your story over time. So when people Google you, like if you guys Googled me, think about all the stuff that you would see back in the day. In fact, an easier way to really do it is if you just go to my YouTube, look at the YouTube channel, and look at the oldest videos till now. You'll see the story change. You'll see the beginning. I think I took most of my restaurant magic stuff down, but maybe some of it's up. But basically in the beginning, it was restaurant magic. Then you see me evolve to the corporate entertainer. Then you see me evolve to the speaker. Then you see me evolve to just businessman in general, right? So it's like you can see the story progress because of everything that you allowed to be available online. And that's what you're really doing when it comes to your story. Your story when it comes to building a business, building a brand, should be all about getting people to take action, to take a specific action. And that action is usually to buy a product, a service. That's the purpose of your brand story. It's like, here's what we're known for. And if you want this thing, buy this, right? So that's the purpose of the screenshots, the social proof, all that sort of stuff is like, hey, we are known for being the best marketers of all time. We can actually build your brand. We're known for this. Look at all the people that we've done this for. We've done this for years. Look at all this, right? And then people think, oh, damn. All right, I got to go with it because I want the same result, right? So that you got to think that the purpose of your story is to get people to do something. If you're building a brand, it's about getting them to buy because it solves a problem. When I was just building up my entertainment business, the story that I was creating was, hey, when you bring me in, the experience is going to be insane at your event. People are going to hands down love it. So everything on my website was about people having a great time. People are like, oh my goodness. And they're flipping out. And you see people like shots like that because my story was, I was telling the story of when you bring me in as an entertainer or speaker, people are going to just flip the hell out, right? That was a story that I was telling. That was a story that I controlled by posting that stuff on the website the right way. So it's all about that. Basically, your story has to be backed up with proof. No matter what it is, sure, you're going to exaggerate. Like Ali said, I'm the greatest. Was he the greatest? Several real boxers will say, no, he wasn't. Real boxers will say, like Roy Jones Jr. was hands down, like probably the greatest in terms of punching power, speed, footwork, all that stuff. They're like Roy Jones Jr., right? And so same with someone like, let's say, Michael Jackson, king of pop. He simply said, basically, I'm the greatest entertainer of all time. And he was like, I'm the king of pop, right? So Michael Jackson wouldn't have been the king of pop if he sucked. And same with Ali. Ali wouldn't have been the greatest of all time if he sucked. Michael Jordan wouldn't be the GOAT if he sucked. So there has to be truth behind it. You exaggerate the truth, you put attention on it, and then you back it up with proof so nobody can dispute you over time. That's essentially how you're doing the entire story, right? That's that. Let's see. Mario said, I have a past history of being a troublemaker in my younger days, and am using my experiences to inspire and motivate others through speaking. Should I control my story by addressing it first, or do I wait to focus on the proper response when someone else exposes my past? So you always control the story. And once again, it depends on like how big of a troublemaker you are or were. But you always want to control your story no matter what. So if you were a troublemaker in the past, then you say it. But once again, even something like that, I guarantee you most people aren't going to bring it up anyways. Like there's no way you were such a troublemaker that it's going to be brought up 10 years from now. Like there's no way, like hands down, there's no way. So you always want to admit to everything. If it's true, admit to it. Like no matter how crazy it is, well, unless you committed murder, then you probably don't want to admit to that. But if it's true, just admit to it. Just be like, yeah, I mean, back in the day, I used to drink all the time. Like that's literally like if the Kavanaugh guy, if he would have said that, yeah, back in the day, I drink all the time. Like if you would have said that, then it's like you're taking the breath out of them. So like they're trying to catch you in a lie. They're trying to make it bigger than what it is, and they're trying to like just, I don't know, just make you off balance, right? But when you admit to it, you literally they have no argument at that point. Literally none. Like they come in all ready to fight, and you're like, oh no, they come in with all this proof about how you were a troublemaker in the past. Oh, we got all this proof. I can show his records. I can show all this stuff, and because they know you're gonna lie, right? They're like, all right. So back in 8th grade, do you remember Catherine? Do you remember how much of a troublemaker you were? Do you remember? And you're like, oh yeah, I remember. My bad. Sorry about that, Catherine. Yeah, I mean, back in the past, I mean, it was crazy. Like what we do. I mean, I'm in 8th grade and I was drinking weed. I was drinking alcohol, I was smoking weed, and I was freaking doing meth and back in 8th grade and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad. And then at that moment, his entire stack of proof is gone. He's like, damn, dude just admitted to it. What? And so that's why you really want to control your story, because literally you just take the words out of their mouth. All right. And so let's see. Nick said, Mario, you got nothing on me. I'm a felon, real estate fraud, and I've been investigated by the FBI a few times. Yeah. So something like that. That's one of the stories where it captures people's interest. Like when you say, all right, hey, I'm a felon, real estate fraud, and I was investigated by the FBI. I guarantee you most people reading that or most people hearing that, they're thinking like, dang, what did you, like what, investigated by FBI? Oh, tell me more. That's what happens, right? People aren't saying like, okay, all that happened and now this dude is still shady. They're simply saying, wow, tell me more. Huh? You got investigated by the FBI? Like, what? For what? And so people are interested in that. And so you control the story. When you admit to it, you're basically saying like, no, I'm a different person. On the other hand, let's say Jordan Belfort, same thing. Jordan Belfort, let's say he didn't admit to any of the stuff. He's no hookers, no, I didn't go to prison, I didn't do any of that stuff. Like let's say he didn't admit to that. Then people are going to say, oh, look at all the proof. Oh yeah, he was in prison. Look at all the proof from the past. This guy's saying it never happened. This guy's like, oh, he's downplaying it. So he must still be a shady ass mofo. That's what they're saying. On the other hand, it's like, here's all the things that happened in the past. The hookers, drugs, getting thrown in prison, all the stuff that happened in the past. Yes, I did it. Now people think, oh, he must be a different person. And so that's why you control the story. That's why you always admit to it. It's not as bad as you think. I guarantee you however bad you think it is, someone else, they have it a million times worse and they're still good to go. I guarantee you there's nobody here who can say their story is worse than Jordan Belfort's story. There's nobody who can say that. And on top of that, it's not worse also because the amount of attention Jordan Belfort got to his story about scamming people, all that stuff, the amount of attention from a freaking movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, there's hands down no way you have a worse story than his. There's no possible way. I mean, literally none. Because he got more attention on it than you ever could. So if Jordan Belfort can get all this attention from the movie and from everything, from his best-selling book, if he can get all this attention on that past and all this stuff being a scam artist and still be pretty good, a multimillionaire, then you can be pretty good as well, no matter how bad your story is. All right. So AT said, I played for Stevie Wonder, but teach emotional intelligence on how my emotions are being controlled by It Got Me Dreams. Yeah. So AT, all you got to do is just, you tell the story and then you back it up with proof. All right. So you say, my stories support my theory. Cool. Is that how I should go about it? And so your story think about your story as your reputation. It's not something you say, it's your reputation. So when you just say something like I did stuff with Stevie Wonder, that's just something you said. That's not your overall story. When I say story, I mean your reputation. I mean everything that has happened to you, everything that's happened, that's about to happen, what you're known for. That's what I mean by your story. And so when it comes to your story, what you're known for is essentially what you've done and what you can prove. So that's where you want to focus all your time on. This is why, like, when people send me a message and they're like, oh, my story is really interesting and all this, and they tell me their whole story, I think to myself, like, show me the proof. Like, the only thing that matters is the proof. Show me the proof, right? And so that's how you have to think. So let's see. Alex said, it's funny how a lot of gurus hide the early days of their struggle. Yeah, a lot of the gurus hide the early days of the struggle because, mostly because it's like I wrote an email about this, about the unethical part. So anyone who's anybody has done things that are considered unethical. Anybody. I guarantee you, anyone who tells you they've never done anything that can be considered unethical, they're flat out lying to you. There's no possible way you can actually build something without literally crossing that line of unethical, right? And so when people do that, they don't want people to know about it. So they don't want to talk about those things that people can consider unethical. And so they just hide it. They're like, all right, let me just hide what I did, and all people are going to see is just where I am now. And so on the other hand, you have people like Jordan Belfort, they're just not ashamed of it. So it's like, I'm not ashamed of it. This is actually how it happened, right? And so when you do that, when you're not ashamed of it, you're just like, so you want to know how I got to where I am? That's how I got to where I am. The only time you should never admit to it is if it was literally illegal. Like if you killed somebody, then you probably don't want to admit to it. You probably don't want to tell people that. But most of the time, just admit to it. Just be like, yeah, I did it. So, and your point is. And so that's kind of what you're doing with your whole story. So understand, control your story, or somebody else is going to control it for you. That's how you're really going to build your entire brand, with a story, understanding your reputation, understanding that it's about you take a simple truth. You take, all right, what do I want to be known for? You take a simple truth, you exaggerate it, you put attention on it, and then you show the proof. That's it. And that's going to be your overall story. Control your story, control your brand, or other people are going to control it for you. No matter what people are saying about you online, they simply do not have the time to control your story. So it's like they have time to maybe post about you on one website. You have time to freaking post 10 videos a day, write 10 articles a day. They just don't, right? So nobody can control your story the way you can. So that's why you always control your story no matter what. All right. So we are going to be doing, once again, the Facebook Lives Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. So I will see you guys tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Thanks everybody for showing up. Take care, everybody.